Thank you all for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to our CLC webinar series. Today is Conquering Deferred Maintenance, a conversation with local government facilities officials. So the presentation, we're going to go into the deferred maintenance and facilities. It's kind of an albatross and varying from several million dollars to hundreds of millions of dollars of backlog per local government organization. And we're going to discuss with experienced facilities directors across Texas that we have here to conquer deferred maintenance, including best practices for capital planning, budgeting, procurement, and more. It's going to be more of a conversation and some questions. And so please feel free to put your questions in the chat or comments. You can put your questions in the Q&A bar and then comments in the chat, and I will be moderating as well. And we'll go through it and introduce everyone in a moment. Sponsoring this event is the State Energy Conservation Office and the Houston Advanced Research Center. And also just a little bit about the organization who I'm a part of. I'm the government and community outreach senior manager, and it's with SPEAR. We cover Texas and Oklahoma. We're a membership-based nonprofit 501c3. And we focus on outreach and education and collaboration on clean energy. A little housekeeping is that, again, questions are welcome in the chat. All the presentations, if we don't have presentations today, but will be posted on the SPEAR website, but also the recording will be posted on our YouTube channel, which has over 160 videos. And then we'll have a survey. They'll be provided in the chat and the follow-up email within 3 days. If you would like to receive CEUs, which you can for ICC, they'll be mailed out within 3 days, but you need to respond and answer the survey. All right, Amir, now you can kick it off.
Okay. Thanks, Sean. Welcome, everybody. My name is Amir. I'm with McKinstry. Today, got an amazing discussion for y'all lined up. And just to do a bit of context setting, in my conversations with local governments across Texas and even beyond Texas, I haven't yet come across an organization that isn't battling a massive deferred maintenance backlog for their facilities, anywhere from a couple of million and a couple of million of dollars to, tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, even in some cases for larger building portfolios. But the reality is the true cost of that deferred maintenance backlog is like 2 to 3 times that. To keep aging building systems operating properly requires band-aids, it requires lots of labor, it requires a ton of energy use, and it can affect building health and quality of indoor environments. So that cost can really tack up, right? And it's a monumental problem. And we're fortunate to have folks on this panel today that are actively doing something to solve that problem. So for the next hour or 55 minutes or so, we'll take you through a journey of what our panelists' visions are for their facility operations at their organizations. What is their current state of affairs? And then what are they doing to realize their visions, including budgeting and procurement practices and how they've been navigating that. So without further ado, let me introduce to you our panelists. First, we got Dale Nelson. He is the head of facilities at Denton County, a 19-year veteran of facilities management. And then we have Wayne Coram, who is the head of facilities and fleet at the city of Richardson. He's a fleet optimization veteran with both public and private sector experience, and he recently took on the responsibility of facilities operations at the city of Richardson, along with fleet operations as well. And then we have Robin Owens, who is with McKinstry. She is our National Strategic Advisor of local governments, and she comes here by way of her work as a deputy commissioner at the city of Chicago. She's an industry veteran of 25 years and has navigated her fair share of internal processes and dealing with vendors externally as well. So my first question then is for Dale Nelson. Dale, please, would love to hear your story. How'd you get into facilities management, and what is your vision for facilities management at Denton County?
Honestly, I got lucked into the job when I started here with Denton County Facilities. was looking for a job, obviously, did have previous experience in construction and different types of construction. So my knowledge fit well with what they were looking for, has some managerial experience, and being a director of facilities is the biggest thing, pointing people in the right direction, making sure you have the right people to do the job and that they're completing the job correctly. The vision for myself, my staff in Denton County is simple. We want to give the best product. We've been given the county's biggest assets to maintain, and we want to maintain those because they're paid for by the taxpayers. And we want to keep those out there in good shape, looking good, aesthetically pleasing, and operational to the best capacity as possible.
Great, great. All right, Wayne, would love to hear how you went from just working with fleet to now working with facilities as well. Did it work out through chance? Was it forced upon you? Super curious about that. And then also, what is your philosophy regarding, facilities, preventative maintenance, and really, what role do performance metrics play in that philosophy as well?
I first got into facilities back in 2017. At that time, the city of Fort Worth, where I was the director of fleet, merged fleet and facilities together. And for a year, I managed that operation, and that was my first dive into facilities. I left there, went into the private sector for about 6 years, came back to government about a year and a half ago, and in this new role over facilities and fleet. So those two organizations are very similar. They manage assets. They're dealing with maintenance and repair. And so from a philosophical standpoint, my focus is on being proactive rather than reactive. Many of the systems that we deal with, when it breaks, we try to fix it. Ours is try to forecast that and make that, get those repairs out in front. And that tends to lower the cost when you do that. You need data to do that. So that's a big part of my philosophy. You can't manage if you can't measure it. So we're working to put a lot of systems in place so we can manage based upon data. And then you also have to have the right people. And you have to either recruit the right people or groom the right people internally, and then provide them the resources and tools that they need to be successful. So that's my philosophy.
Yeah. So you've been at the city of Richardson for a year now, correct?
14 months.
Okay. Yeah. What would you say is your vision to 3 years from now or 5 years from now? What would you like that facility's operation to look like?
So part of that vision will be to make this operation more proactive than reactive. It was completely reactive when I got here. 3 years is to be more proactive with more preventive maintenance, and then the foundation of some long-term capital planning. But we'll get into more of that later.
Absolutely. Great. And then Robin, you come to us from Chicago. We're gonna get to hear an outside of Texas perspective here, which I'm excited about. Please tell us how you got into the FM space, and what facilities management goals should a municipality strive for organization, and publicly.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Umair. Thanks for that too. And even though I'm, miles away from Texas, city of Chicago, and most of the agencies in Chicago, we have so many common threads. So we can definitely speak together in unison on some of these issues. But so a little bit about how I got into the facility management space. I'm an architect by training, and I practiced for many years. But then as I got into the program management space, I was in the private sector, and then was able to work with various agencies as a consultant, as an in-house consultant. And with our program management, we would, provide strategic counseling and advice, and then implementation of, their real property facility portfolios. And so with that, worked with multiple agencies within the city of Chicago and a few sprinkled outside of Illinois, but primarily, being able to work with a number of different agencies really helps you to understand that common thread that is woven across, any agencies and the issues that they have. And then most recently, like you mentioned earlier, I served as deputy commissioner for the city of Chicago, where I ran the Architecture, Engineering, and Construction Bureau, but literally worked simultaneously and hand in hand with our facility management division. And, in doing so, it just gave an even clearer picture to, and I think like Wayne and Dale mentioned earlier, wanting to get in and have, a proactive mentality and get in front of these issues. It is so much easier said than done. And we definitely have our work cut out for us. Well, I had my work cut out for me for sure, but you guys being in the public sector now, definitely have your work cut out for you, because it's so hard to get in front of some of those long-term deferred maintenance issues because of a myriad of different challenges that public agencies have. But anyway, and then to answer your question, Umair, when I was in my role with the city of Chicago, I would always stick to a few core reasons and goals of what I wanted my department, to strive for, organizationally and publicly. And I say both because, while I was a public servant, being able to have the public as our customer was extremely important. And so the goals that we set needed to be broad enough to capture the internal organizational goals, as well as the goals to consider for what the communities needed as well, because ultimately it's their money that funds all of this, right? So if I were to be able to narrow it down, I would always think of just maximizing our asset portfolio. What do we have in our inventory in terms of buildings? We did have a fleet asset as well, but just in terms of our buildings, being able to maximize and get the most out of what we already had, and just helping our buildings have the fullest potential. It drives staff motivation and obviously return on investment. And then on the flip side, being able to minimize the operational costs. So if we are trying to operate a large portfolio of buildings, how can we operate more efficiently, right? And how can we avoid stretching our operations team so thin? And then reduce the downtimes that are inevitable when we have like a run to fail approach, right? So we know if it runs to fail, it's going to fail, and then there's going to be a downtime, and then everybody's going to be scrambling, trying to get back up and running. And we just want to ensure our efficiency of properly working equipment was there, not only for the staff to operate, but also for the end users. Being the public. And then I think the third thing I would look at is just being able to extend the lifespan of those pieces of equipment or those facilities. The timely maintenance, the upgrades, and it's a lot of work. That's easier said than done too. But if you maintain it regularly, it just extends the equipment lifespan, extends the building lifespan, and it saves money in the long run too. And then lastly, I always love the word agile or having agility, because especially with public agencies where we know there's going to be a definitive turnover of administration, which means there's inevitable change, which means budgets change, et cetera, et cetera. So being able to have like a clear real-time understanding of the property inventory, of what data systems are we using, and then being able to quickly adapt to changes before the budget changes or before the administration changes. So I would say those are my 4 key reasons and goals to strive for.
Hey, great. That was great. So just to summarize what I heard so far in terms of visions, we want proactive maintenance, data-driven decision-making, community-centric, in terms of how we're going to optimize our facilities, and then optimizing life and health of those facilities, and having agile organizations that can adapt to the changing climate around us. The word we didn't hear was around energy, but the cool thing there is if we accomplish all of those things, those facilities are all going to be highly energy efficient as well, because you'll be optimizing for energy while doing all those things as well. So that's our North Star. Let's now get down into the current state of affairs. So let's start with you, Wayne.
Okay.
Tell us about the situation you inherited. Oh, sorry, Sean, were you going to say something?
Oh, I would
Yeah.
just like to kind of read the room a bit, and we have a poll question for the
Okay.
attendees. Uh, I was just curious on what indicators suggest adequate facility management for those of you who are attending. I'll go ahead and launch the poll. Let's see what the response is.
Beautiful. Appreciate that, Sean.
Mm,
Okay.
so
Should I keep going or should we wait for the poll to populate?
Well, let's give people a moment.
Okay.
Here we have defined strategy for facility asset management, um, or frameworks to adapt to technological change or innovation, or current facility asset inventory, and then lastly, properly maintain facilities. And
Yeah.
people are being pretty active. We have um, several people responding, so let's just give people a moment. And I'll put this to the panel for you all. Which ones resonate the most with you?
So again, for the panelists, the question is, what indicators suggest adequate facility management? And I'll be very honest, probably a trick question because there should be this is select all that apply, so that should give that away, right?
Yeah, I would say they all apply.
All of the above. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Have to agree with that.
So here's the results right here, and I
Oh,
define.
great.
Yeah, go ahead and expand on that one there, Robin.
I didn't want to jump in, Dale or Wayne, if, please chime in, wherever you'd like. But, yeah, I think we were all on the same page with, checking off all 4 of these boxes, because it is, when you put them all together, it's a strategy. It's defining the strategy for initially for your facility management operations, and defining that strategy then therefore builds the frameworks, and it helps you take everything into consideration, your staffing, your portfolio square footage, and your budget, right? And what roadblocks you might have for budgeting and procuring certain, immediate repairs or ongoing maintenance that's required. And then keeping that facility inventory up to date. The data systems that we have available to us these days can generate things, right at our fingertips, so that we don't have to do all of the thinking, and we can make our staffing more efficient. And then just leading to properly maintaining the facilities. If you have a data-driven intel, then you can address the issues right away. And then, forecast how your procurement needs to be thought out, which I think procurement can often be kind of a scary word, but love to hear from Dale or Wayne on their input on that.
Yeah, absolutely. We recently completed FCI, which I call a FLR, Facilities Life Report. So we know where we're at with our facilities and what kind of shape they're in, where we need to pay close attention to right now, next year, 5 years, 10 years. And very fortunate that we've been trying to get this report done for a while now, but our members of court realize the importance of this and understand the important nature of the assets that we maintain. So we have a report now. We have to figure out how to manage this report. It's a large report, a lot of information in it. We have 30+ buildings in Denton County that we maintain. So we have to cipher through it, figure out what are we going to put on CIP for immediate needs, all the way out to long range needs. And be honest with you, this is, we work CIP, we put our things in there, our mechanical issues and stuff, but we've never had anything like this before. It's next 5 years is going to be very challenging for us, but I'm glad we have people supporting us on this and people that's willing to help us cipher through this report and put it in order. Next thing is great staff. Wayne mentioned that earlier. I could not do anything here at this department without the staff that I have, the people that we've hired here at Denton County. Amazing guys working for us here at facilities. Robin also mentioned procurement. That is a whole nother game right there, getting things through procurement. Chiller replacement, just take, for example, you would think in the outside world, you can go out, you can get your information, pick your subs and all your equipment and get it done. In my world, I'm a year to year and a half out from starting a project such as a chiller replacement, through all the information, through the legal process, procurement process, going through the court vetting process. Everything's a long process for us here. And part of that process is at the end of the process, you started off with $1 million job. Year and a half later, it's $1.5 million to $2 million job because of price increases. So all those things I'm sure everybody does it. You have to take into consideration and just be on point and be ready. But very happy that we have this report and happy to discuss it further and however any information needs to be shared.
So Dale, would you say completing that FLA, is that what you called it? FLR, facility life report? FLR. Also, AKA FCA, AKA building assessments, AKA capital plan. It's used by so many different terms, right? Would you say that was like the first step in you going towards the journey towards realizing that vision that you have? It's like, I need to know what I have and what condition they're in, and when I should do what.
Absolutely. That was the biggest thing. I have been here, Denton County Facilities for 19 years. We're trying to be in the last few years, much more proactive versus reactive. We've always been a reactive department, and it's because we never had time to be proactive. You're always putting out fires. Everybody asks me what my main job is, or ask me what I do for a living. I tell them I'm a fireman. So I'm always putting out fires. Then I have to go and elaborate and explain it to them. But the report is definitely put in perspective and broke things down for us of importance of what our buildings are, what shape they're in right now, and where, like I said, where we need to focus first on major issues. And it was very eye-opening. The dollar amounts for the next 5 years is very eye-opening. We have done a great job. Our staff has done a great job. As Robin spoke a while ago, we're usually band-aiding situations. We have to get more in line with this report and take care of our assets. I mentioned before, these buildings don't belong to me. They don't belong to the people I work for. They belong to the taxpayers of Denton County. So when they walk in to conduct business at this county, that building has to be on point and ready and acceptable for them, not for me. And our staff, our Denton County staff is equally as important.
Yeah, that's super powerful. Wayne, you joined City of Richardson a year ago. Please tell us what you inherited. What's the mountain you got to climb, if there is one?
Oh no, there's a mountain. Certainly there's a mountain. So when I got here, we have a staff at that time of 7. Now we're up to 8 staff members that do facilities maintenance citywide for over 1 million square foot of buildings, about 40 buildings across the city. So that's a challenge. They were very reactive in everything they did. Okay, something's broke, go fix it. I did have and do have a very experienced and excellent facilities manager who's my assistant director over that group. And he had a number of years in the private sector with a major company prior to coming to the city 5 years ago. So his feet are on the ground. He knows what he's dealing with, and he's been able to make some decisions just from experience. But one of the biggest challenges has been just not having sufficient facilities to work with. Their office space was undersized. They did not have a workshop to work out of. So when this department was created, one of the 4 sections is the warehouse, the central receiving warehouse for the city. And there was some additional space in there that was adjacent to the facilities office. So we were able to expand into the warehouse, build them a workshop facility the staff can work out of, free up some office space for them so that they're not kind of sitting on top of each other with all their equipment. So that was a big plus. The other I inherited was they use a kind of a modified work order system that's really more for infrastructure and not for facilities maintenance. And so we're evaluating whether or not we can either convert off that or to adjust that to work to what we need. And so we're evaluating that. And I mentioned data earlier, and I wouldn't start with a building assessment, but if it's early in the process, I need data. And so with that system issue is what we're working on now. They don't have to be sequential. They can be simultaneous. We can be working on both at the same time. And that's what we're trying to do here is move that needle. And now I mentioned my facilities manager is experienced, but he's also coming near the end of his career. And so from a succession planning standpoint, we got a plan. He should retire in about 5 years. And so we got to plan accordingly.
Wayne, expand on that. Building assessment don't have to be the first thing. And you're also looking at evaluating the infrastructure maintenance software and how it applies to facilities. So in your professional opinion, what is the first thing? And how do you go about doing that?
Well, and that's why I was alluding to, they don't have to be sequential. I don't need to finish
Okay.
one before I do the next one. They can be simultaneous. So, but I want them to finish about the same time. I need the data and then the assessments to make the good decisions for moving forward.
Yeah. Okay, that's clear. And then in evaluating an infrastructure management software and its applicability into facilities management, I'm curious, what are you looking at as the deciding factor?
One, I want to know kind of the status of the work orders. One of the biggest challenges that we had here when I came on, all of the people that interviewed me were our customer departments, the city departments that we serve. And they were all like, we just never know when things get fixed or what happens. And so a big piece of that is communication. So in that work order system, it needs to tell us the status of it. Needs to be able to notify our customers, what the status of that is. It needs to allow an easier opportunity for them to contact us when things need to get done. So building a front end that they can easily use. Right now, some of them just pick up the phone and call my assistant director. But there's a way that they can send an email that creates a work order, but nobody really knows that very well. So just things like that are kind of helping us kind of gather that information and providing that data. And then when we have the data, then managing by metrics of the staff of how many work orders are getting completed, how long is it taking us to do them, things of that nature based upon the different repair type. Different repair types have different tenure or length.
I see. So something like a dashboard that others can see of what's going on, status reports and things like that. Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. Robin, any thoughts?
Yeah. I just want to rewind back a little bit to something that Dale mentioned, just about being proactive and, so we know it's not always about getting in front of the machine or the piece of equipment or the building that's before it fails. Sometimes being proactive can also mean different procurement strategies. And I know, Dale, you mentioned procurement being, one of your biggest challenges because to procure something, you're, 12 to 18 months out, right? And I lived that for, a number of years. But having other methods in place, procurement methods in place specifically for these, the facility immediate needs and the urgent response conditions that we had to be available for, we put procurement methods into place where there would be a pool, there would be a job order contracting system that we had so that we could just pick up the phone and call, ABC contracting or whatever the case is and have them be able to go fix that, immediately, because that's a surefire way. But even then, we didn't get ahead of the deferred maintenance as much as we wanted to. But even then, that would be better than having an immediate need not be considered immediate because it takes an 18-month procurement. So I just wanted to speak to that and say, I hear you. And sometimes being proactive is also about processes that we can explore and talk to our surrounding support departments and come together and, work together just to get that mechanism in place, so that we can procure more quickly.
Sure. Thank you. Just to speak of, we use job order contracts from time to time. It's not the preferred method here at Denton County. We are using it more and more, and you are correct. It helps tremendously with timelines to move things forward and to get boots on the ground.
Absolutely.
At the city of Richardson, yeah, we have a set of contractors that we already have established contracts with that so we can use them to supplement, work that our staff can't complete or larger projects, whether that's an HVAC or plumbing or and a lot of preventive maintenance, elevators, generators, things of that nature. We use contractors to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Any of those pre-qualified pools are definitely going to be your friend. So whether it's Jock or, purchasing agreements or anything like that, definitely have those in your back pocket.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dale, you alluded to seeing some numbers that in your FLR report that opened your that raised your eyebrows quite a bit, right?
Correct.
And now it's time to start attacking that number and
Yes, sir.
then budgeting and procuring the right type of services and capital equipment and so on and so forth. So just
Right.
give us a light into your 19-year career at Denton County. Like, what have you learned in terms of best budgeting practice? How are you going to go about budgeting for whatever the next thing is? How are you going to procure it? Would love to hear from you on that.
Yeah, sure. So it's not real difficult. We know what our problems are, what our main problems are from the report. Of course, we have other problems. Budget is starting right now. Actually, we're starting our budget process. We're kicking it off. So we're going to take a lot of these items. We're going to go through the first several years of items that are suggested in this. We're going to sit down and put pencil and paper to it. Get them to our bosses and put them in the CIP for the next 3 to 5 years. Immediate needs, we're going to put obviously in the budget for next year. We do have several of those, and it's in the several $1 million range of things that we need to complete pretty quickly. And unfortunately, with the budget process, it's up to interpretation. We turn everything in. We do the best job we can, getting the information out and making everybody aware of our issues. Then it has to go through the next steps, has to go through the budget and through the upper echelon, if you will, for approvals. And everybody probably knows sometimes other people don't see things from the eyes we see them in facilities and, a service industry. Well, you can fix that. You can do that. You can keep this. You can put that on for another year or put that off for 3 or 4 years. Well, the problem with that is what we found out is 3 or 4 years becomes 5 or 6 years, 7 or 8 years. And then you're into that fail situation that Robin spoke about earlier to where it's critical. And when you get to the critical point and you have to wait 12 to 18 months to fix that problem, you're in a real issue. So what we're trying to do is we started a campaign here within facilities to help our upper echelon understand our issues and see what's going on and what affects. If we have a chiller or a couple chillers go down our course building or something goes out the building, that's our main course building. I don't have a backup to that building. You're shutting down a course building for a matter of weeks, days, months. Nobody knows. Depends on the situation, but how do you bounce back from a scenario like that? It's really difficult, and it's really tough to explain something like that to the public. Why was your maintenance not on point? Why were y'all not doing the things you're supposed to do? And when you put it in those terms, it's a little more understandable. Hey, we need to stay on top of these assets. I'd also like to speak to Wayne, what Wayne spoke of real quick, if you don't mind. He talked about the work order program. We've had the same work order program here since 2006, and it's grown. We have grown with it. We have helped them become a true work order program for work such as facilities type work. It is amazing. We track everything from how many work orders to certain offices, the type of work orders being done, how many at each building. Repeat work orders. So we know, hey, this is a real problem. In the last 6 months, we've had this VAV box. We've had a problem with this thing 6 times, once a month. We can go back and pinpoint that and use that data to streamline our maintenance as well and have a better understanding of our facilities. And we do have a dashboard for Denton County. any employee can go on through the Denton County intrasite and put in a work order for an issue. The pub, not the pub, but the people that work in our buildings, they're our eyes. I have staff, but we can't see everything every day that goes on. People in the buildings do. They're the best source for how our building's living and breathing.
So you're essentially signaling to, a larger, let's call it an issue, just a lack of understanding around the importance of facilities and how complex of ecosystems that each buildings really are, right?
Right.
And that lack of understanding can very often lead to, necessary budget requirements sort of getting pushed out, which is what leads to this whole deferred maintenance problem in the first place, right? So, Robin, would love to hear from you about, did you encounter that much in your career? And if so, what have you found good practices to help overcome that and grow that level of understanding that we need across the organization?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So both Wayne and Dale are just speaking my language, and we're all speaking the same language. It's, to the point about work order systems and whatnot. I think it's fantastic that I think Dale, you mentioned that all of the employees, right, in the organization can put in a work order at any time because they're your eyes and ears. And that's fantastic. Like being able to work smarter, not harder, have the people out there that know the building and what's going on, put the work order in right away. I guess one of my questions, and this is a challenge that, I have experienced before, but when only certain people are trained and are knowledgeable about that work order system, so everybody doesn't maybe have the ability to enter into that work order, and then some things don't get added, the balance of that was often challenging. But we did try to get there. And I say we, I'm speaking broadly about all of the agencies that I've worked with, but that was always, the goal of just maximizing the systems that we had to work for us in the best way possible. And getting people trained and up to date on work order systems happened to be one of our challenges. So some people would be able to enter in and know the system and know what to do, and some people wouldn't. So we would always play the balance of that. Just curious how you guys are balancing that aspect of it.
Honestly, like I said, we've had our work order system since 2006. We've had a lot of growing pains, and it's very user friendly. Every office, every room, and every building's on the work order system. So you just basically, if you were putting in a work order, you would pop in the system, find your building, find your office or the room office that you're having an issue or see an issue with. You would select that space and then put in the comments what the problem is as you see it. With that, it's very, very user friendly, but it's taken us years of working to get to this point, and a lot of data input to get to this point as well. There's a lot of legwork leading up to where we're at today.
That's where I'd say the data piece is important and why you need both the building assessment and the work order system. So we talked here about competing priorities with a lot of needs and limited resources that either us as leaders or the folks that we report to have to make decisions upon. If I go to my facilities manager, he wants to replace this roof. If I go to my fleet manager, he wants to replace this trash truck. If you go to the police department, they need this tool to make the citizens more safe. So there's competing interest within the city. And I think having data helps kind of rise to the top, because if you can show from a data perspective, this is the need, this is the requirements, then I think leadership is much more open of like, oh yeah, you really showed the need. And then the money comes a little easier.
Wayne, expand on that. Data is one thing, but what data is the other thing, right? And that's the more important thing. You and I would both agree on that. So what data could drive that point across that, hey, this is a top priority item? Is it consequence of failure? Is it consequence to business? How do you view that?
So I view that from a cost standpoint. I mean, it's like much cheaper is it to do the preventive maintenance than to do the full replacement. The cost analysis of the building assessment, as Dale's just, as he's kind of alluded to, it's kind of eye-opening to folks when they see what that dollar figure is. And I expect that same thing when we get our assessments done. But at the same time, having the data to show what the unit cost is, along with that big capital cost, and then just having all those pieces of data to bring to the table on what the difference between scheduled versus unscheduled repairs is, and then what the capital replacement cost is, whether you do it now or 3 years from now or 5 years from now with some type of capital plan. And then they can make the appropriate business decisions at that point in time.
And I wanted to add to that, Umair, if you don't mind, what we're talking about here seems to be like the facility management divisions, right? But one of the challenges that I experienced was being able to get everyone on board with that data that was getting input into whatever system we were using to make our operations more efficient. That, it spills over into the finance department, right? What expenditures are we doing? We're punching it into our system, but does our system speak to theirs? And oftentimes the separation between departmental strategies and methods and procedures don't always speak to each other. So that was one of my biggest challenges as well. The finance department is doing everything manually, just totally hypothetical, but I'll go back, 10 years or so, this was an issue. They're doing everything manually, and we're doing everything by a database, and we're punching in this information so that it can be, systematic. And we need our wraparound departments to help get us to where we need to be. So that was a big challenge. Everybody's not doing the same thing and using the same databases, and getting them all to speak the same language was always quite a hurdle. How do you guys deal with that, or do you at all?
That's what I was going to actually ask, Robin. It was just if you all have created an integrated team across the department so you could work together to overcome those type of challenges. I worked at Travis County for a decade, and we worked very hard on connecting with the facilities team, especially when it came to examining costs and energy consumption. And so they had cross-departmental teams where we examined that and worked with the auditor's office as well as with facilities, and really looked at that facility portfolio so we could examine those outliers. Do you all have that in-house?
So one of the things, if we need to do kind of some special project, we would do cross-functional teams. But what we do on a regular recurring basis is quarterly, we meet with a group that we call asset coordinators that we have in each department, that we can get feedback from them and then provide them information on initiatives that we're trying to push forward, or new systems we're putting in place and the training they need for that. And so working with our customer departments to facilitate that communication back and forth.
We do work with our CIP committee, which has a department head or elected official from every single department in that committee. So every department does know what we're working on, striving to get to the center point. As far as the work order system goes, we do have an interface written by our IT team that interfaces with our work order system, POs, requisitions, and things to the outside departments, outside of facilities. So if we process something and send it, it gets recognized and changed over so they can read it as well. But Robin, yes, we do have a problem. We are looking at implementing a new countywide administrative system here. And we are totally going through that whole process again, where nothing's going to interface. Everything's going back to, I'm a manual person for their stuff, they're a manual for me, until we can figure out how to integrate everything. That is a huge hurdle.
Yeah, we'll hang in there.
I'd like to mention a couple of things. One, we talked a lot about funding and funding sources. Dale's mentioned CIP a couple of times. We've been fortunate to have the city has set aside a certain percentage of their annual budget for facilities maintenance. So we have a facilities maintenance fund we can do larger repairs with. We have a dedicated budget within our department to do just ongoing and regular maintenance annually. And then we have the CIP that we can tag into that we're going to in 2026 for big, large projects. So we have kind of that whole mix. But the one thing that hasn't been mentioned, I think, we're talking about budget procurement, is timing. So, you can have the data, but if you ask for money right after the sales tax revenue or the property tax revenue is taking a big dip, you're going to get an immediate no. But if you're ready when that money becomes available, or if we get a little bump, then, as they used to say, if you have a shovel-ready project, then that's the time to gather that. And then Dale alluded to it, the budget process. For us, it's 6 months of prep for a year budget. So you're planning 18 months in advance, anywhere from 6 to 18 months in advance, and just trying to forecast and project those numbers for that process and prioritize the things that need to get done.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
So curious on your thoughts on this then. We all know things move slower than we would all like, right? So imagine there is a project that should be done 6 months from now, but typical procurement process can sometimes takes longer than that, right? And if it's pushed beyond 6 months, then you start to incrementally accrue additional costs, that you didn't foresee. Are there budgeting practices that y'all have seen and implemented that can help shorten that procurement timeline down to what's necessary as well?
Robin spoke earlier about the using like the buy boards or tips or things like that. That a lot of times helps in emergency situations. We use those for more emergency type situations, or if you just deem it an emergency. I mean, we have situations here in Denton County where I can't wait. I have to get a piece of equipment replaced right now, which is deemed an emergency. You have to get approval from court, and it goes through court, gets approved by court as emergency. And yes, I can deem that and go with a particular vendor or co-op. But that's not the normal. That's the exception.
I had a question before we move on from funding is have you all explored using energy services contracting where you can utilize the rebates coming from your improvements on your buildings? Have y'all explored ESCs at all?
Yeah, I'm gonna say yes, we have. We're Denton County. We are on an energy co-op for some of our outside buildings. And it's just pure energy. It's pure buying energy at the lowest cost and contracted it in. Denton County is a little unique. The city of Denton is, there's only one electric provider here, and we're locked in with them no matter what. We can't go with anybody else. But it is interesting. We have looked at a lot of different things, replacing lights and different functions, and to conserve energy in the buildings through a process such as you're mentioning.
We just entered a demand response program, so we haven't realized any of that yet because we're in the setup stage currently. But hopefully to kind of dial back things periodically or during an emergency response prior to a rolling blackout event or something of that nature, we're working with a group to do that now together. It's a minimal amount of savings, but good fund a position maybe. Which we're looking to do with that. But other than that, the bigger piece we're getting out of that is more sustainability and kind of environmental efforts and some good publicity within the council and the citizens from it.
Okay. I just mentioned that because I do, from this work here at Spear, I've come across several low interest loans specifically for local governments, through the USDA, the State Energy Conservation Office. They have the Lone Star program. So I was just curious if any of you all had taken advantage of that. There's several questions in the Q&A chat. Amir, did you want to go ahead and address some of them?
Yeah, certainly. All right. So first question is from Sarah Terry Kobo. What building data management systems would you recommend or recommend against, knowing public employees generally can't endorse specific companies or products? Well, Robin has the pleasure of not being a public sector employee on this panel. So Robin, you want to attack that one?
Yeah, so just speaking broadly, and that's a really great question. So you do have to put a bid out and you do have to have, go through the procedures so that everything is done fairly. But I would definitely say, get the bids in, evaluate them, and look for aspects of that data management system that speak to if at all possible, that speak to existing systems that your organization has, so that when you do have to state your case for why this vendor for this data management system is right for the job, you can say, well, our finance department uses it, our facility or well, our capital planning department uses it, our, any other department that might already use something similar or use a management system already that has communication capability. So can you pull information from an existing system into this new one? And can that vendor take existing information and fold it into this new system that you are trying to procure for? So I would say that's probably one of the biggest things that you want to make sure that anything you want to state your claim for, it speaks to everybody and that it's going to benefit all of the departments.
So putting myself in Sarah's shoes, I'm like, there's so many vendors out there, and so many of them are saying the same thing. How do I cut through that noise? How do I know what's true and what's BS? Any tips or tricks to overcome that, Wayne, Dale, or Robin?
But the one thing I'd say is assess what your current needs are, because sometimes the system will be more robust than what you need. And you don't need to buy the really, really high dollar system that will do 12 things that you don't even need, if you just need these basic things to get you out of the box. And so that'd be one of the things I'd say. Demo the systems, talk to your peers in the industry, talk to people who use that software, and get good references.
Yeah, our procurement department uses a system, I guess like I said, called Bonfire. And basically it's years past, we always went with lowest bid, which is not a good practice. So we started using Bonfire. And what that says, if you're not familiar with it, essentially does, you pick several people, it could be anybody, somebody not even from your department and other departments. And everybody submitting for that, to be part of that or to get that work, they have to submit, you have to review their submittals, questions that they're answering, and you score them off of that. It can be partially off pricing, it can be off several different factors, however your procurement department wants to set that up. But that, to me, it's arduous process, but it's a good process because you can have multiple people evaluating and you come up with a more structured thought process at the end of who your best company would be.
Yeah, I would add to that too. Making sure that the software is expandable. So I think like Wayne mentioned, you don't have to buy, the Cadillac of the systems, especially if you're on a tight budget. Maybe you just buy, the aspects that you need at that moment, but is there room for future expansion? Because as everything evolves, especially technology, but so does your department, so does your agency. So look for that room for expansion and ask the vendors, I'd like to start small. I don't need all that right now, but there's room for growth, in the next several years or so. The other thing I would say is, look out for proprietary software. You want to make sure that things speak everybody's language and it's not just solely based off of one company's generation of the software for you specifically. Sometimes that can work for you, but sometimes you also need to use that broader vendor capability just for the leverage that you need to get something passed, through your bidder evaluation.
That's a great point, Robin.
On expandability, you may or may not need additional modules within the system, but you may need additional capacity. So you add buildings, you add square footage, you add staff, And if the pricing's based upon the number of people that are using it, you know, you do a staffing analysis and you decide, hey, I need 2 more staff members, and you get approval for it, but then it's also going to cost you that much more for the system usage. You got to count that in to your calculation.
And also look for a company or vendors that have 24-hour availability, because guaranteed something's going to go wrong, or you're going to have a question, or somebody's going to need a little bit of help walking them through it. So I think that's another important aspect to have when you are looking for database management software.
Yeah, include
24-hour support.
that tech guidance and the
Yeah.
training component. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're almost at time, and we've covered a lot. It can be a little overwhelming to digest all that. So I want to do a quick round the horn with the panelists. One most important takeaway for the audience out of this. We could start with you, Dale.
I think for me, the most important thing is to be prepared, have your information, gather your information, and be able to present that in a structured form that's understandable to your superiors, your bosses, and your buildings are your biggest assets you have. I appreciate everybody letting me Umar be part of this. It was great information, and I learned some things today.
Good. In the words of Scar and Dale Nelson, be prepared. Robin?
Yeah, it's so hard to narrow that down, but I would say, just get your supporting departments around you and team up. It really goes a long way. I know agencies tend to work in silos sometimes, and sometimes that's effective, but in the grand scheme of things, you all really need each other. So I would say definitely huddle together. You get your, main departments that can support you in your initiatives and getting things passed through different lines of communication and approvals. And then having the community, having the public as your sounding board sometimes, make sure that you include the public, because optics is really critical and important to public service.
So collaborate and engage internally and externally. Great. Wayne, what do you have to as your one important takeaway?
Yeah, I kind of echo Dale a little bit, like build a plan, but when I say a plan, it's not just operational, it's financial, it's customer focused, it's timing and kind of the political environment, all of those kind of key elements in your plan, and then work the plan.
Yes,
sir. So be sort of multi-perspective and adaptive and agile, essentially. Okay.
Yeah, don't get caught looking in a narrow focus. Be broad.
Yeah, this was great. Turning it over to you, Sean. Would you like to add anything to close this out?
No, I've learned so much. The expertise that's in this room per se for this webinar is fantastic. You all have such a great higher level of examination on how to move forward with facilities. And I want to thank you all to all the attendees for attending. I'm going to put a link in the chat. Please respond to the survey so we can explore what you'd like to hear more of. One thing I do want to reflect is there was a good conversation about procurement, and I think that is a topic that is worth pursuing in the future and having a good conversation about. And thanks again to all our panelists. I look forward to connecting with you all in the future, and there are several people who would like to connect with you as well, and I can share that information directly to you.
great.
Beautiful. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great
Thanks,
afternoon.
everyone.
Thank you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.